that they continue.
Okay, Edward, I think they have introduced themselves.
Yes.
Liani posted in the chat that she doesn't see any way to turn on her video or mic.
I'll take care of that, Len. Ed, I think you can start the meeting now.
Okay, Vincent, please call the roll, please.
Okay, Ed, thank you. Calling the roll for today's meeting is Robin Broshi,
Here.
Eric Goldberg,
Here.
Emily Hallstrom. Is Emily on mute or is she not present?
He had an issue, I believe.
Get the family.
Okay.
A health emergency, yes, or health.
Oh, I saw a quick message, yes. Vincent Hom is here. Edward Irizarry.
Here.
Maud Marin. Okay, not present. Benjamin Morden.
Here.
Ushma Neal.
Here.
Leonard Silverman.
Here.
Shino Tanakawa.
Here.
Thomas Rockledge.
Here.
Okay, so we have, and Katarina Kaur.
Here.
Okay, great. So we have 9 of 11 council members and our student member present. Edward?
Great. Okay, so now I believe we go to the first public speaking session. Is that right, Robin?
Yes.
On our agenda, it says the presentation of the
Oh, sorry.
resolution.
Thank you. Yes, the wrong person. Eric.
Sure. So just a quick overview on the resolution before us regarding reducing class size. Simple overview is that class sizes in New York City continue to be large relative to the nation, New York State, and the metro area. It's a consistent parent focus on school surveys that the #1 area that they want to see change on is in reducing class size. The C4E lawsuit asked New York City to actually reduce class size. That was never realized. We have additional funding coming in from the federal government, from the state and the city. And the hope is that we can send a message tonight that this is a priority for our students in our classrooms in the coming years.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Now we go to the first public speaking session, correct?
Okay, so the first speaker is Craig Slutskin, followed by Leonie Hameson.
Mr. Slutskin.
I promoted Craig Slutskin to panelist so he can have video if he wants while he's speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ed. So I was going to ask the CEC tonight what they're doing to ensure schools are truly being reopened this fall. But I'm actually going to pivot to a different question. One that doesn't affect my pre-K son now, but several years from now will affect him. And I'm sure many families in the district have the same concern that I do. I heard middle school admissions results came out today, and I heard and read numerous horror stories, kids getting their absolute last choice. Several CEC members, when discussing the diversity admissions resolution a few months ago, and while praising a full lottery this year, claimed that most kids will probably just get their top choices, maybe not their first or second, but certainly their third or fourth. And clearly that didn't happen with a lot of students in the district. So my question for the CEC is whether the DOE will be releasing the analysis. How many kids in this district actually got their first, second, third, fourth, fifth, blah, blah, blah choice? And then sometime in September and October, how many after waiting lists have gone through wound up getting their first, second, third choice, et cetera? You know, many parents that I speak with are wondering whether or not to stay in New York or leave to the suburbs or possibly Florida for lower taxes. And I'm sure understanding whether their kid will have any chance of getting into schools that they worked hard to get into will factor in into that decision is even worth to say. So it would be helpful to understand what information we're going to wind up getting about this. Thank you.
Next speaker is Lenny Hameson.
Lena, you should be able to speak.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, well, thank you for considering the resolution. I know you've passed similar ones in the past, but I wanted to make it clear why I think next year is both the best opportunity we've ever had to really start reducing class sizes in the city schools, but also the most important time for students to be able to get that close academic and social emotional support from their teachers after a year and a half of either remote or blended learning, when they'll need that support the most. Why is it the best opportunity that we've had? It was mentioned in passing already that we are getting a lot of additional money both from the state and the federal government. In terms of the state, we're getting full foundation funding that was promised to us because of the CFE lawsuit back in 2007. Starting at $530 million, rising to $1.3 billion over 3 years. The federal money is going to be about $7 billion over the next 2 to 3 years, both for additional academic support and health and safety. And we did an analysis showing that if there's going to be any social distancing at all next year, even 3 feet of social distancing, more than half of kids in New York City public schools could not attend school full-time 5 days a week with 3 feet of social distancing. And we don't know whether that will be necessary or not, but it may be because younger kids may not yet be able to get vaccinated. In any case, we know that in the CFE lawsuit, the state's highest court said that kids in New York City schools were denied their constitutional right to a sound basic education because of their large class sizes. They issued that decision in 2003, and yet our class sizes are larger than they were then. So this is a perfect opportunity, and I just wanted to mention 2 things. The City Council has made it a priority for the budget.
I'm sorry, but you're out of time. Thank you very much. I see the next speaker is Anessa Brenez. There's 2 attendees logged in as Anessa. Could you use the hand raising feature so I know which one to promote to panelist? Thank you very much. Someone took care of that.
Hello, can you guys hear me and see me?
Sure can.
Okay, perfect. So today I kind of wanted to talk about why kids in New York County should be able to have a prom and kind of just state my case. I go to a District 2 public high school, and we are all so grateful that we're able to have a graduation and safely do it, as kids 16 and up can get vaccinated, and the senior class is made up of 17 and 18-year-olds. But I know that other counties in New York State, such as Nassau and Suffolk County, are allowed to do these prom gatherings with higher infection rates of COVID. And the city, as of yesterday, I believe, each positive case resulted in 0.77 new cases with a positive test rate, positive test rate of 1.1%. And since we can all get vaccinated, if the schools were able to host it, like they can actually monitor like social distancing, mask wearing, as opposed to like student run proms, which could result in spreading of COVID, which will probably happen. I just think that it's best if we can do it in the safest way possible. As well as this, neighboring state New Jersey is also able to host proms with about 12.5 new cases per 100,000 people each day, which is a much higher rate than we have in New York County. And also in New York County, private schools are able to host proms with larger and smaller capacities in a lot of New York City public schools. I know my grade is about 112 people, and the capacity for many venues is 150 right now for safety and COVID reasons. So I think if we can urge it to happen in the most safe way, run by schools, it won't be a COVID spreader. And I think we can all end our high school career and life together and in a positive way besides graduation, kind of just casually. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Anessa.
Thank you. Bye.
Let the record reflect that Emily Hellstrom has joined us. The next speaker is Janine Keeley.
I've promoted Janine.
Good evening. My name is Janine Kiley, and I am here to speak in support of the lower class size resolution. I am the chair of Community Board 2, and I formerly chaired the Schools and Education Committee for CB2. And CB2 passed a similar resolution last month in support of smaller class size, hiring teachers and using the federal funds to hire 2,500 teachers. We know from research, smaller class sizes leads to better grades and test scores, is job or student engagement. For those of us who had children in small pods, we saw how they benefited from that additional attention, even if it was remote. And one of the earlier speakers is worried about keeping parents in New York City. One of the best ways to do that is to get lower class sizes, so our class sizes look similar to what people may see in Westchester and other suburbs. Switching hats, I am PTA co-president at PSIS 276. It is an unstreamed middle school, and I just want to say it's a fantastic school. I know it's really hard not to get your first choice, and I think kids have been dealing with that for a long time, but I just want to point out that we have fantastic middle schools. In District 2, we are very lucky with that. And any analysis in terms of getting your first, second, or third choice also needs to be compared to what students got in previous years. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mar Fitzgerald.
Hi. I really just wanted to echo what Lainey and Janine said about the resolution. I fully support it. I think the last thing we want to do going into next year and the next few years is shove these kids into classrooms like sausages. We know it is proven, there is science behind the fact that smaller class size leads to better educational outcomes for our kids. And that is what we all want. So we have the money. This is a wonderful opportunity. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Next speaker is Kaushik Das.
Sorry, the background is not intentional. I don't want to shut it off. But in any case, last month I came here and pointed to the low attendance. I'd like to do so again. This time you have 20 attendees, on the order of 20 attendees and 6 speakers. May I ask also why time is limited with only 6 speakers? Yeah, I want to echo something that Craig Slutskin said. Yes, we target middle school lottery. The D15 model, many of the leadership here praised this. It didn't work. I can tell you anecdotally, the parents are disgusted. There are a lot of choices, people that got 6th to 7th choices with only the occasional first choice. I haven't yet heard one person that got 2nd, 3rd, 4th. You have a very odd distribution from 1st to 6th and 7th. You want to pat yourselves in the back for a resolution for smaller class sizes. Haven't you achieved that by 25% of the district families leaving inherently? Why are they leaving? They're leaving because of removal of district priority for high schools, poor choices like lottery for middle school, and a ceaseless attack on gifted and talented, and haphazard lurching about in school reopening. These are why families are leaving. You're not paying attention. As for the CEC, you're not listening to parents either. Why would you limit our speaking with only 6 speakers? Look at your attendance. It's time for a change. I'm glad the CEC elections have just finished or about to finish. I hope the elections deliver that. Thank you very much.
That is the end of the speakers list.
Thank you very much, Shino and Robin. Thank you. Okay, now we have the report of the president. I don't have much to report other than the announcement today that the middle school selection letters have gone out and parents have received them. The chancellor will be embarking on a 5-borough family engagement tour. We will be meeting with the chancellor May 24th. That is the date for Manhattan. And you are to keep a lookout for the registration link. The elections are ongoing, of course, and today is the final day for elections. The New York City Education Council Borough President and Public Advocate appointee applications are available now online at the DOE website. And other than that, I have nothing else, and I will turn it over now to the superintendent, the report of the superintendent.
Thanks so much, CEC and President Irizarry. I've got a couple of things that I'm going to share this evening. I want to talk a little bit about the tenure process that is used throughout New York City. This is the season of tenure for teachers, and I'm joined tonight by 2 of our teachers who are applying for tenure, and I want them to just share a little bit this evening. I think Danielle, since you logged in first, maybe we'll have you share first just to put you to let you know, and then after they share, I will have a little bit more information to share about the state of things in the district and how things are going in the schools. So, but I wanted to just start by sharing a little bit about tenure. So tenure can be earned in New York City after a probationary teacher completes 4 years of successful teaching service. It is this time of year that teachers who are applying for tenure in September share a portfolio of their work with both their school principal and the superintendent. The portfolio covers 3 basic areas: student learning, instructional practice, and professionalism. It's through the portfolio that teachers demonstrate the impact that they have made on their community. Through artifacts related to student learning, teachers must share how they have supported their students to successfully make gains on standardized assessments. This isn't limited just to standardized state exams, but rather includes rigorously developed tools measuring student learning that are used in the school community. Teachers applying for tenure demonstrate high quality instructional practice through their curriculum design, skill at creating a respectful and nurturing learning environment for kids, and implementation of their pedagogical practices. Principal evaluations of teachers' lessons are part of this portion of the portfolio, but also examples of work that they have implemented in the classroom. Professionalism is the final area for which teachers applying for tenure must share evidence if they are to be successful in their application for tenure. Just as we want our children to be lifelong learners, we also seek for our teachers to be reflective and consider how they might consistently improve their work in the classroom. Teachers also demonstrate their professionalism through their contributions to the school community, participation on teams, and work with families. The process of reflection and gathering of evidence to support one's application for tenure is no small task. In addition to addressing student learning, instructional practice, and professionalism, teachers must also construct their portfolio in a way that tells the story of their journey as an educator. This is not work that can be done in an afternoon. In District 2, our teachers applying for tenure must meet high expectations for the work they share in their portfolio and in the classroom. It's just a start of what we expect throughout the teacher's career in our district. Tonight, I'm very pleased to be joined by two of our teachers who are up for tenure in the fall. Carmen Romero is a 5th grade teacher at PS 89, and Danielle Alderman is a 4th grade teacher, I believe 4th grade teacher, correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle, at PS 59. Their portfolios are web-based and extensive with tens of pages and hundreds of entries. They won't go through it all tonight, but I've asked them to share some of their work with you, not as a part of their application for tenure, but as an opportunity for the council and for members of our district community to get a better sense of the work our teachers are doing in the building and remote classrooms, the curriculum they are designing, as well as what is expected of our teachers as they apply for tenure. So please join me in welcoming Danielle Alderman from PS 59, and Carmen Romero from PS 89. So I will turn it over to you, Danielle.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danielle. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see a little bit of my tenure portfolio. I think I need to be able to share screen.
I'm going to make you a co-host, Danielle.
Okay, thank you.
I'll also do so for Carmen for when it's her turn.
All right. So just to introduce myself, my name is Danielle Edelman. I am a 4th grade teacher at PS 59, and this is my 4th year teaching at PS 59, but my teaching in New York City overall. I think it's important when I introduce myself that oftentimes people ask you, like, what's your why, right? Like, what's your purpose as an educator? And for me, it's for my students to identify as lifelong learners, for my students to really believe in who they are and embrace everything that makes them unique, and to ground every piece of instructional decisions in my students' identity so they have that really strong sense of self-worth. When I started to think about what I wanted to present in my tenure portfolio, it was actually really clear to me. Something that stands out in my teaching goes back to my why, and that is that third piece with grounding my instructional decisions in my students' identities. So the most important thing for me as a teacher is to get to know my students, and that is establishing trust and truly getting to know my students so that we can create a positive and collaborative learning environment. And in my tenure portfolio, you will see evidence in how I build trust with my students and how identity is incorporated into every aspect of the school day, from day 1 to day 180. In all lessons and in all content areas. And you will see evidence in my teaching last year. And I think it's important to note that I am teaching 4th grade fully remotely this year. So I believe, I'm fully confident that I have included identity and trust into my fully remote 4th grade classroom this year as well. So just to take you a little bit through my portfolio, and then I'll highlight just 2 of the artifacts that I think really speak to who I am as a teacher. So I've set up my portfolio as thinking about the different aspects of the school day and how identity is truly incorporated through every single content area. Just a heads up, I've taken out pictures. So in my portfolio, you would have seen pictures, but you won't see them today. So my first piece will incorporate community and identity, and you'll see evidence of pictures and charts, PowerPoint slides that I've used, as well as examples of charts created with students. Then you'll see in my writing section, again, how identity is incorporated through different units throughout the year. And again, I've included videos of my own teaching, slides that I've used, charts, and reflections with every lesson that I've included. A big piece of my portfolio, you'll see student work in their notebooks, in their reading notebooks, their writing notebooks, Jamboards, because we use that remotely. So you'll see students' voice everywhere. I've also included data pieces throughout each unit and so forth. Again, you'll see how my portfolio is set up. Then I go into reading and how identity and student voice is incorporated into the reading units. Another video with student work, student data, and then my reflection on and my next steps with reading levels and student data. My final two sections are incorporating math and identity. Data to show beginning of year and then middle, end of year. An important part on this piece is how students have reflected on their growth through writing, through video. So I have an example of a student speaking about how she feels about as a mathematician. And then finally, as Kelly pointed out, my professionalism, so communication with families and students, my contributions to the school and community, and then my observations. So there's two artifacts that I'd like to share with everybody this evening. The one is an identity web. And in the beginning of the year, we always use an identity web to really share who we are in the classroom. The identity web process is an example of how I show identity and how acceptance is really centered in my classroom. This is an example of a student who I had in both 3rd and 4th grade. And in the very beginning of 4th grade last year, on the 6th day of 4th grade, after modeling my own identity web, sharing pieces of who I am, my own identity, and really creating that trust and relationship with my classroom, this student who I've named Student D shared on his identity web that he would like to use the pronouns he and him, whereas in the past identified using the pronouns as her and she, with a nickname that he would like to use from here on out in the classroom. And this was a moment I will never forget in my teaching career. And this identity web process was not just an identity web process, right? Not just writing your own identities on a piece of paper, but really was the start to sharing who he is and who he wants to be in this world. And we can see, you know, this identity showing up in every aspect of the school day. The fact that he felt valued and accepted, you know, showed up in his reading, showed up in his writing, showed up in every conversation in the classroom. So this was an important step in his life, but again, shows how identity and valuing your students is so incredibly important. And it changed his life and of course changed my life. This here, just quickly, is an autobiography that he wrote at the very end of the year and wrote that, you know, something I really want people to know is that I'm transgender and I want people to use he and him. So this identity web process really just gave him a voice, gave him a voice in my classroom. And again, we see that coming up in every aspect of the school day. So the second artifact that I'd like to share with you tonight is the personal essay writing process. And we know that when students are have their identities and their voice at the forefront of their teaching, at the forefront of their learning, they are more engaged. When they are writing about their own personal lives and their own personal experiences, it is so clear how you see a difference in their craft, in their elaboration, in the type of writing that they engage in. This student in particular, who I've named Student A, is a current 4th grader learning fully remotely. And she was a Black student who had a hard time accepting her hair due to its ties with her racial identity. And through the computer screen, you know, creating that trust that I do with my students and that relationship, I really encouraged her to write something about that she truly cares about, something that matters to her, something that she feels passionately about. And just like I said, through the screen, I was able to encourage her and motivate her to write about her experience with her hair. And she came up with the claim, "My hair used to make me feel like an outsider, but now it makes me feel unique." And you can see through these artifacts, she wrote about a mini story, she wrote about her experiences, and she, as a 4th grade student, felt that sense of voice, right? Through this writing process. And she was able to feel confident and, you know, honest with herself about who she is. Really quickly, another student who is currently learning fully remotely. This student has an IEP and is currently reading well below grade level. And again, this unit was everything for him. To be able to write about who he is and who his experiences, you can just see the volume in his writing, whereas he normally does not write as much as you see on the screen today. And he wrote his claims, "Making friends is hard for me," or "It's hard to stand up to bullies." And you can see again, through identity and student voice, this student was able to write extensively throughout this unit and really showing who he is as a writer. So these were just two pieces of my portfolio, but you know, I hope you can see how identity and really cultivating student voice makes such a difference in student learning and the overall education process. So thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Kelly?
Danielle. Carmen?
Thank you, Danielle. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, members of the CEC and Superintendent McGuire, for allowing me to share a glimpse of my work as an educator. My name is Carmen, and I have the pleasure of being a 5th grade ICT teacher at PS89 in Battery Park City, which you can see in the background of the homepage of my portfolio here. And at PS89, we really aim to ground our work in inquiry and collaboration to meet the needs of our diverse learners. And I've organized my portfolio by year and subject area, but I'm going to focus in on math and take you through a math journey, so to speak, of this year, and just offer you a small glimpse of what we do in math in the classroom. So we start off 5th grade in our fractions unit, and we start our fractions unit by assessing a big understanding of the relationship between part to whole, which is a really big understanding in fractions. And we use the Metamorphosis Math resource. It's a really wonderful organization that our school has partnered with for many years now. And we use one of their resources called the Big Debate. And in this pre-assessment and through this question, students are asked, I overheard 2 children arguing. One student said, "My 1/4 is bigger than your 1/2. The other child said, "That can never be. What do you think?" And our assessments showed that 16 out of 18 students agreed that 1/2 is always bigger than 1/4. And it was only 2 out of 18 students who argued that 1/4 could be bigger than 1/2, depending on the size of the whole. And this is just one example of that majority of that 16 out of 18 students who have come from 4th grade, understanding fractions on a number line, clearly understanding many of them equivalent fractions, but not being able to wrap their heads around the concept that the size of the whole matters. And so that's something that we wanted to target in our work this year. So what we did is we made something of that misconception and we developed it. And we dove into a rich task called the bike race, in which students are asked to design a 60-kilometer bike race. And that 60 kilometers is very purposeful and intentional. It's a number that we can divide into parts that students can multiply. It's a number that they can work with. And we set it up in a very exciting way. So this is a series of days, this bike race. And on day 1, I really try to build the intrigue. And I talk about the 5-borough bike tour, which many of you may have experienced. And I have students think about my own experience having done the 5-borough bike tour. Cheers to any of you if you've done it, or anything similar. And having them think about all that you come across along the way. So it's very much based in experience so that students can really grasp and wrap their heads around it. And this is in the context of blended learning, right? This is in the context of students at this time in the year coming in one day in person and the other being remote. And students were able to plug in different sections along their bike race. So they're thinking of 60 kilometers, they're plugging in cheering sections, they're plugging in a juice and snack table. I made a big deal out of water stations being frequent and every 1/10 of the race. So they're dividing this 60 into different parts. And we do a lot of observation all throughout. So for a couple of days, as students are creating a math poster and as they're developing their thinking, my co-teacher and I, we're an ICT, are providing a lot of support, asking questions, and consistently assessing their understanding and asking them questions like, why did you divide your course in this way? Why did you choose to put the cheering section here? Why did you choose to put that section there? And it's especially important when we think about our L learners in our classroom, our English language learners who are developing their oral language, to think about the needs of our diverse learners. And we do think about the content standards and thinking about the skills that are embedded within this rich task, right? Fluently multiplying multi-digit whole numbers using the standard algorithm along the way and solving real world problems, which is what they're doing, involving the multiplication of fractions and mixed numbers. And we have some students and they are in masks, but we do kind of assess along the way and realize, some of our students do need certain tools. So you'll see 2 students here, one of whom is an L student in our class who is using a fraction bar. She does really well with visuals and tools. And another student who had a really hard time wrapping her head around what this 60-mile bike course looks like. And so I gave her graph paper and we together cut out 60 cubic units and we kind of lined them up, and it really helped her wrap her head around the start and finish points. And it was then that she was able to graph different points. And a couple of artifacts that I'll kind of zone in on here. And it's wonderful to see that we have similar tools around the district, and Danielle uses this tool as well, but it's called a Jamboard. So in a typical year, we have math posters all around the classroom, and students are walking around and leaving sticky notes. And there's no reason why we couldn't do that remotely as well. So what we did is we took pictures of those math posters that they worked at independently at their desks. We photographed them, put them on slides, and students virtually left one another comments and positive feedback and questions as well. And you can see that these bike race posters all look very differently from one another. But within them, students are plotting fractions, they're multiplying and dividing. And we're coming back to that idea earlier on that the context is important in fractions. The part to whole relationship is key. And that's really what we wanted students to understand as they went along. And what we then do is, after having this virtual gallery walk through a Jamboard, we have a math congress. And I particularly enjoy the math congress because it's an opportunity for students, after having received positive feedback from a peer, to then take those questions and take those comments and respond. And they're always eager to respond. So we think very carefully about the order within a math congress, but we thought about some students who we wanted to give the opportunity to share their work, right? That student who was using graph paper. Other students saw that and thought, well, I didn't think to use graph paper. So I have a video of her explaining her own thinking and explaining why she chose to use it and how it helped her, right? I started to use graphing paper because I got stuck on water stations and labeling water stations every 1/10 of the bike race. And the graphing paper really helped me because I was able to count the whole. The bike race was 60 kilometers long. So we have different students, videos of different students showcasing their thinking, explaining their thinking to their peers. And the Math Congress is really the culmination of that rich task. But we then had, of course, a few other lessons, and we carried our unit forward. But we also wanted to ground our work in data. So what you're seeing here a lot here is formative assessments along the way. But equally important is our summative data. And we're thinking about a lot of different components. So I'm thinking about those content standards that I mentioned earlier in math. And I'm thinking about what the pre and the post assessment looks like, right? The particular skills I want to develop for kids all along throughout the unit. What does their understanding at the beginning of our unit look like? And how has that understanding developed? And how has it influenced my teacher all throughout? And we also collect a lot of other information. So you'll see here that I've written race and ethnicity, and I've just taken that specific piece for each student out just to respect student privacy. But overall, our class breakdown is, right, 28% of our students are Asian, and 11% of our students are Latino, and 61% of our students are white. And we're also thinking about IEP classifications. And that data is important to just guide my teaching and inform student understanding around fractions. And I then assess and analyze that data in my portfolio. So in terms of understanding and demonstrating, right, the growth in understanding of multiplying fractions that students had. And based on this data, 100% of all students improved their cumulative scores from the pre to the post assessment. 30% of all students achieved an overall score of 100% on the post assessment. And we have students, 4 out of 17 students, who are approaching proficiency. So they're nearly there. And we thought about other groups that you saw highlighted in the data, right? 2 out of 4 students with ADHD received an 88 and 100% proficiency score on the post assessment. 1 student with autism improved from a 38% to a 100% proficiency score. 2 out of 2 Latino students improved their cumulative scores by a measure of 50%. So I hope that just by glimpsing this math section of what this fractions unit looks like this year through my portfolio, that you're able to get a glimpse into our classroom and my teaching and what I think is truly important to my teaching, which is catering to the needs of diverse learners in our classrooms and really focusing on inquiry and collaboration. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Carmen.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Carmen and Danielle. And, you know, I was thinking about inviting Carmen and Danielle to share this evening. You know, I was thinking a lot about the work that I did as a principal. People know I was a middle school principal for 14 years. And a big part of what it is that I thought was important to do was to try to give parents a glimpse inside the work that we do. You see papers come home, you hear your children talk about the work that they're doing in classrooms, but a big part of what I want to do, what I did as principal and what I hope to continue to do as superintendent, is to try to offer authentic glimpses into the experiences that your children are having in school. And I really want to thank Danielle and Carmen for sharing their time this evening and sharing your work and giving us just a chance to see that and appreciate all that you're doing with kids, both in person and remotely over this past year. So there are a few other items that I'd like to share with you this evening as well. I wanted to share that principals and their staff continue to plan for the Summer Rising program. The city is committed to making this kind of program that will not only provide opportunities for kids to continue learning throughout the summer, but will be a program that will be exciting for children and that they will be motivated to attend. In District 2 schools, schools are partnering with community-based organizations to run hands-on arts and science learning activities. Teachers are designing activities for outdoor learning that includes lots of walking field trips and visits to parks and cultural institutions around the city. Planning is certainly underway, but I do want to address that there are DYCD is continuing to programs on their website as they are coming available. There are several programs that are matched with community-based organizations, including schools in Chinatown and the Lower East Side, middle school programs at LMC and 289, and Uptown at PS 198. Those programs are 100% online, and hundreds of parents have already begun signing up. And we anticipate that more sites will continue to be fully online starting next week. The city's committed to having programs for any child who wants to participate in Summer Rising. And so if you're a parent logging onto the DYCD site and you don't see your child's school listed, you can complete a preliminary application that will record your interest and then match you to a program once all community-based organizations are matched to school sites. I'd also like to share an update regarding the learning preference in our district. The average rate of learning, the average rate of in-person learning across our district is 56%, but of course, that data varies widely from school to school. In-person learning is lower in middle school and higher in elementary school. We have a significant number of schools that have more than 75% of their students attending school in person, but we do have some that have in-person learning that is below 20%. I want to just again acknowledge the incredible work that our principals and school communities have done to respond to the needs of their students and to respond to the ever-changing health and safety policies adopted by the city. Normally, it takes months to put together a school program that makes the most of resources and creates the best opportunities for kids. Schools have had to do this multiple times over the course of this year, while still continuing to run the program that currently exists in the building. In addition to policy changes, they are considering what is best for students in their schools. The largest number of our schools hover around 50 to 60% of their students who are learning in person. And so this means that teachers and leaders are continuing to consider what is the needs of their students that are very, very diverse. And so I'm just very impressed by all of the work that has been done over the course of this past year. I want to reiterate that the mayor and chancellor are committed to serving all families 5 days per week in the fall next year. This is what we are planning for right now. Increased vaccination of adults, the availability of the vaccine for kids aged 12 to 15, and a reduction of positive cases of COVID, and all the new science that we've learned along the way regarding how COVID-19 is transmitted will make learning in school buildings possible. I completely understand families that have chosen to remain remote to this point. For some families, this has meant a consistency with a teacher that their child loves. In other homes, school-aged children live alongside medically vulnerable family members. Starting in the fall, we do need to get all of our children back in school. Much of what our children need can only be offered by coming to school in person. And I think that you saw a little bit of the amazing work that our teachers are doing and that we can make sure that our kids are having in classrooms every single day. Another item is during our April meeting, CEC members asked me about the upcoming state exams and the number of students in the district who are registered to take them. The math exam, the state math exam administration is continuing through the end of this week, but ELA exams have concluded, and I have some estimated numbers. The official reports will come out later from the state when the exam scores are released, and we should have a little bit more data by our June meeting. Elementary school students took the exam at higher rates than did our middle schoolers. Around 55% of students in grades 3 through 5 took the exam district-wide, with fourth grade being the having the highest participation. Fewer students took the exam in middle school, with about 40% of students taking the exam. And 7th grade was the year that the average number of test takers was the highest across all schools. Again, these are estimated numbers, and I will make sure to share more during our June meeting. But I do also want to just share that the state exam data are just one measure of how we routinely use assessments to measure student growth and design responsive instruction. Teachers like Carmen and Danielle have continued to implement and use student assessment data to inform their instruction and monitor student progress. And that information will be shared with families toward the end of the school year, both in grading and summary reports. Those are the data that we're using to help to design our planning for the coming year. And I'm looking forward to reopening strong, as well as finishing this year strong as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Superintendent McGuire. Thank you very much. And Danielle and Carmen, thank you. Now we're going to hear from—
Hey, Ed, I just, if we had a moment, I just had one quick question for Superintendent McGuire.
And me too.
Go right ahead, Ed.
Great, thank you. Well, first off, as you just said, thank you, Carmen, Danielle. Those presentations were incredible, and I think give us all a little insight into the incredible teaching that our children have, opportunity to learn from every day. So thank you to Superintendent McGuire and to both of you for bringing that to our meeting. I just wanted to check on two issues. First is, as was stated earlier, middle school admissions offers were released today. And I'm hoping that at the next meeting, you can share with us some of the data that was suggested. Maybe as a CEC, we could come back with a more specific ask, but certainly at minimum, number of students that matched by choice. And also if we could get a grasp on the geographic mix, and that could be looking at feeder schools that go into like the elementary schools that feed into middle schools. Just really want to ensure that people who wanted to stay close to home were able to. That probably is reflected in first, second, and third choice data, but that would be really helpful. So first, second, third choice data, as well as the number of seat offers at each of our middle schools. And certainly I think the CEC could come up with a data request on that.
I think it's important to keep in mind the point that Mar Fitzgerald made about this also being a comparison. In a vacuum, just looking at this year's data is going to be fraught with problems if we don't have a comparison.
Agreed. And to that point, Pushma, it would be great if a council, we could give you kind of a little, request.
Yeah, I absolutely can prepare those data for June. As you said, it was really just the preliminary, or it was just the offers that had come out, but I haven't seen any comprehensive data regarding admissions for the fall. But I will make sure to have that for June.
Great. Thank you.
Robin?
Thanks, Ed. So first of all, I also want to echo what Eric said about our teacher presenters tonight, Danielle and Carmen. That was so insightful. Both the specific content that you guys are working on and how affirming it is to the identities of the children that you are responsible for made me feel really, really hopeful. It's so much of the work that, since I've been on the council for 7 years and, in the past few years, really talking about social emotional support for our students and validating their identities, and to like see this concrete presentations of what that looks like in action in the classroom is it's like it made me so excited and hopeful in a way that I can't say I've felt recently. And so I just thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you, Kelly, for facilitating both their work and for bringing them to this meeting to share with us. And, you know, I know there's an election and we could have complete turnaround on the council. And I just hope this kind of presentation, that regardless of the content, but like where people that come to our meetings can like see what is happening in classrooms. Like that's honestly the first time I think I've seen that. We've had some student presentations that were amazing that I think should also be revisited, but that was so enriching compared to just sort of some of the data that gets shared. So thank you very much.
Really appreciate that. Thank you, Robin.
Oh, you're welcome. So 2 questions that will be, may not have the answer to, but first one, the same one I've asked for the past 2 months. Anything on how G&T assessment is going to work?
I know that you asked something more specific than that, though, didn't you, Robin?
So I guess I'm wondering, there was this, the last thing I remember hearing was that teachers were going to be making, families could apply to be put in some sort of lottery for G&T seats, and there was going to be some sort of school-based assessment done for kids that were enrolled in pre-K. And then Central was going to do its own assessments for students that were in the CBO pre-Ks. And so the last I'd heard is there hadn't been any guidance or instruction on what that would look like, what these assessments for whether students got to get kicked into the lottery for seats, what that would be. So I was wondering what this current status is of that.
So that's another thing that I can make sure that we share a little bit more with in June, so that we don't have a three-peat of seeking more information about this. I will say that the period at which parents can request their child to be evaluated has now ended, and the process of teachers engaging teachers and school staff for the majority of kids who are referred or recommended or whose parents are requesting assessment for G&T is taking place. But I can get back with you in regards to further information about how that is going and what the number of seats that are going to be available, and where there's no difference in the seats that we're looking at offering for the coming year. But we can look a little bit at placements and how those placements were done, and I can share that in June.
And then my other question is just, I think we're all assuming that there's going to be like a normal 5-day a week, like 2019 version of school next year available for our students. And I think that's a safe assumption. But I also suspect there are going to be families that will still want remote for one reason or another. And I know that you don't have control over what, essentially the mayor decides that will look like. But I'm wondering if you are gaming out scenarios where the mayor says schools are still responsible for providing that a remote instruction, whether the districts are going to be responsible for providing that remote instruction, or ultimately if he says Central is going to take it over and then maybe that none of it will be on your plate.
Yeah, I absolutely understand the question, and as somebody the council is here in the service of the district and the community members. And so it's an important question for teachers, for school leaders, for parents. Everybody is looking to find the answer to this question. It is not finalized in any kind of way. I will say that your assumption is correct, is that we are moving forward with planning for an opening in the fall that looks, well, I'll say has the structure of fall 2019, but hopefully we've done more to ensure that we're preparing our adults to return to the buildings if they haven't been there. Ensure that we're supporting kids to return to the buildings if they haven't been there, and also to just really manage the different kind of learning year that our kids have had. Some of them have had amazing experiences in remote learning. And we want to make sure that we're building on what it is that we've learned there. We know that this was a year that was interrupted, and we want to make sure that we address that as well, both academically and socially, emotionally. And so I say that we want to return to what it looked like in 2019, but I'd say also that we want to be better at that. We want to be more responsive than that. We want to be responsive. And so, but we're not quite there yet in terms of having a finalized plan for who it is that might run remote learning classes, how those might be organized. That's something that's still being worked out.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Superintendent?
Yeah, I have a few. Hi, Kelly. So is it typical to analyze student performance by race in individual classroom lessons?
Yes, in fact, it is something that we want to make sure that we're keeping close track of. And I will say that it's not, in a classroom of, 25 kids, you might not be able to, it's not a large enough sample to be able to,
right,
track data long term. But, we do want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students. We want to make sure that if there are trends, whether it be by a bunch of different criteria, by gender, by race, by disability status, by English language learner status, that we are tracking that and making sure that as educators we're responding to our students and meeting the needs of everyone.
So do you aggregate the data to maybe come up with a larger sample size that would be statistically meaningful?
I mean, the same kind of data analysis that we saw our teachers doing in their portfolios, I know that our principals do across their schools. Those data are looked at all levels, really. I mean, they're looked at the school site level, they're looked at the district level, they're looked citywide. And yeah, I mean, as we get larger samples, then, different decisions are made based on the level at which we're talking about in terms of allocation of resources or a look at curricula. So those data are certainly used.
Okay. Do you employ critical race theory or anti-racism in the curricula?
I mean, I'm not sure if you're referring to a specific program or if you are alluding to a certain set of, hardcore or hard and fast and objective criteria. What I will say is that we want our teachers to be conscious of race. We want them to be aware of the identities of students that are in their classrooms. We want to be aware of the identities and experiences of students who are in our schools and at our district. So I'm not sure where that response falls, but I will say that race is something that we want teachers to look at as one of the criteria that they are considering when making all kinds of choices about how it is that they, how and what they're teaching.
So are there any guidelines or sets of principles that parents could look to see how teachers should be using that?
I'm not exactly sure I know what you're
I mean, is there any like common throughout the district way that teachers are taught how to use the racial data or to implement, whether it's a specific idea of critical race theory or anti-racism into the classroom curricula? Is there any, source that they would go to employ that?
The city of New York, follows the a set of state guidelines around using culturally responsive and sustaining education. And I would say that the best source of your, to answer your question, is to really look at some of these big goals and initiatives that are really started at the state level, trickle to the city, are embraced by city leaders, and also by school leaders. And that shows up in terms of, all different kinds of decisions that people are making at all of those different levels. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say start with looking at the CRSE framework that is shared by New York State, and that will provide a great guide in terms of what it is that I want to say what it is that we are asked to do, but I think that it's work that we can all agree is important in considering the needs of the students in our schools, especially in a city that's as diverse as ours.
Okay, and just one more quick question. Any chance that you could talk to Superintendent Rosales about getting a prom for Anessa?
Yeah, I don't know where Anessa goes to school, but
It's at Clinton.
Clinton, the one school that's under my superintendent.
There you go. It's on you now.
Just to put you on the spot.
No. Listen, I think that everybody wants high schoolers to end in this year in a joyful way, for sure, with real celebration. And so I just actually was involved in a back and forth conversation, a good back and forth conversation about an end of year celebration, not at Clinton, but at one of the middle schools. So I think that it may, the guidance that I was offered there may be helpful in our thinking about what Clinton is planning. But I'm not sure what Principal John Levin is thinking about for Clinton yet, but we want to have celebrations for kids as they're finishing up their high school year. But I really appreciate Tom, your sharing that. I think all of us heard her comment and wanted to be helpful, and so I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for the superintendent? Okay, seeing no further questions, we will move now to the reports of the subcommittee.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question of the superintendent.
Fair enough. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Superintendent. I had a number of parents who contacted me. Well, I discussed with in terms of the state tests that took place, and there were a lot of concerns with regards to that these tests were used exams that they had seen before, that kids had studied to varying degrees in school, and I guess the recurring theme was whether they're going to be used for admissions. I wonder if you have any information about that. And the other thing is what do you think of the validity of this test, given that many students have actually seen the questions and the answers as well?
Yeah. I wish I could say something specifically about the exams and they're having shown up as practice assessments in some classrooms. That certainly is not something that we've done in the past, and something that, I mean, when I think that actually there may have been a question or two that has happened in the past, and that's not something that people generally want to have happen. But the only information that I have on that so far has been, the same information that everyone has read that's been in the news. And I haven't heard anything official from the state or the Central Department of Education in regards to those assessments. I think that it is. I think that it is going to be difficult to use if not impossible, to really use the assessments to make broad statements about how our students are doing as a whole. We don't know exactly who took the assessments yet, but I will say that what perhaps might be an interesting point to look at is for families when they receive the assessments. They can look at it, and I would say it would be something that they could consider, but consider in the context of a bunch of different things. Consider in the context of all of the different assessments that their children have taken over the course of the year. Consider it in the context of past assessments, given that this year's assessments are much, much shorter and of a different type than has been in years past. In years past, students who may have performed well on an extended response or an essay did not get didn't have that type of assessment administered during this year's assessments. And so, it is, we never say that we want to just kick information to the side and not pay any kind of attention to it, or immediately just throw it in the garbage. But certainly this year's assessments were administered in a way that was very different from in years past. And so we're not going to be able to make the same kinds of statements about student learning that we've made in the past. And so, more information will come out, and I assume that the state, I don't know, I would think that the state data could come out earlier than in years past, because there is much less to score than in previous exams.
Thank you for your response. You also shared with us, I thought was a very interesting data, that in-person learning is now at 56% in D2. Do you know the data, the jump from the last round of being able to opt in to in-person schooling?
We had about 1,000 students who opted back in.
Wow, excellent.
Across the district. And so and I think it really varied. Some schools were serving in more than 70% of students in person prior to that new opt-in period. I don't think that the overall average was that significant. I do think that some of our schools I do know that some of our schools experienced between a 5 and 10% gain in in-person learning. And so, a lot of this breaks down in patterns that we've been seeing throughout the year with schools that have had large percentages of in-person learning throughout this since September, maybe notched up a little bit in this last opt-in period. And so we saw a move to more in-person learning in those schools that had lower in-person learning, but it was just that those schools continued to be the ones that had far more students who were learning remotely.
And can you provide us with the data per school? And is it being studied to see why some schools are not performing, but are just happen to have more students joining than others? I mean, that could be something extremely important to learn what's the case. Is it more to do with how the schools are handling COVID, how they're handling remote learning, how they're handling how they're encouraging students, whether they've already had a lot of student losses, because we've lost 2,000 students in District 2. So is that data being studied? Because I think you can kind of glean some best practices and some some that have to be improved.
Yeah, I mean, some of these trends that exist in our schools mirror those that we're seeing across the city and across the country. I think that those data are important for us to consider. I think that there's just such a variety of factors that play into this. It certainly is, there are factors that are, connected to the way the family at home operates. It's interesting. Many of our schools in Chinatown are schools that have the lowest percentage of in-person learning. And what we've heard anecdotally from some families is that the Summer Rising program is a program that could be a real support to families, because families had been able to work out childcare or a structure of the school day that worked throughout the school year with students being fully remote. It was much more of a challenging schedule to work out at home if children were blended or only going into school a couple of days a week, 2 or 3 days a week. But the Summer Rising program is, the vision is, or the plan is, the program will be 5 days a week. It'll be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. for elementary school aged kids, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. for middle schoolers. And so that's a program, or that's a structure that really supports working families. And so I'm not saying that that's the only reason why we see some schools with lower percentages of students who are learning in person, but it's just another factor to consider and understand in why it is that some families are making the choice that they are.
Okay, I have a point of order here. We have our great chairperson of the Students with Disabilities Committee at home with a son who is recovering from surgery. And I just want to interrupt now and allow Emily, who's also our great vice president, to give her report before she has to sign off. On the Students with Disabilities Committee, we also have the translators that will be signing off at 8. So Emily, if you're prepared to give your report, please go right ahead.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. And I didn't mean to interrupt. I know there's a lot, Kelly, that you're talking about that's really important. So I apologize. And I do apologize to not have my camera on tonight. But we had a really robust forum discussion the other night at the Students with Disabilities Committee, which was co-sponsored by a number of different CECs across the city, and also community boards as well, which was really exciting to see everybody coming together. It was our 3rd annual, which was really also exciting to build on that. And we had 104 people logged in, which really felt like it was really serving a need for people. So it was, hear the public when they say, you know, are people sort of signing in and, you know, paying attention to the CEC? Are we talking about things that are relevant? So I would just say that certainly this evening really felt that way. And I know that parents also have downloaded the video and have accessed the slides and actually even reached out to our panelists, which was really also an exciting thing. So I would urge you to visit the CECD2 website if you would like to access that. The name of the forum was Dyslexia and Other Learning Disabilities, how to go through the IEP process and how to advocate for your child. So that was really exciting, and we look forward to more meetings of this nature. And then, of course, we will have our monthly meeting next month, though I have not set the date yet. So I would just offer that people should look out for that. And we also would really like to continue the conversation on ASD Nest. I've had several smaller conversations with some of the members of that group as well about continuing to sort of build and form that community into something that is more robust. So again, I apologize for not having my camera on, but I just did want to get in the fact that it was a really exciting meeting. So thanks so much.
Great. Okay, do we have any other reports from any other committees? Students in temporary housing? Ushma?
Tom, do you want to start?
I was just going to say we have a meeting tomorrow, but go ahead.
That was going to be one of the things I would bring up. Our group has decided, we skipped last month, but we will be having a meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. Please join us. The details are on CECD2.net. Shino really did a phenomenal amount of work together with colleagues at FACE to put forward the orders for backpacks and graphing calculators with the CECD2 budget that we were allowed to reprogram towards helping our students in temporary housing. So thank you very much, Shino, for leading that effort. And it will be ongoing, actually, when the supplies come in. We probably, Shino, might reach out to help with the redistribution because we had the items sent to 3 schools, but we might want to pick up some of the items and reallocate, like the graphing calculators, to some of the middle schools that have 8th graders that might need to use those. So that's one massive accomplishment, and we all should be enormously proud of what we were able to do as a council. 2, we are proceeding right now. 2 members of our committee, or 2 members of the general public who raised their hands, Salima El Amin and Jocelyn Anchor, and I are leading a group to revisit what all of our schools did last year around this time. It was actually in April, where we match schools in District 2 with a shelter that's in District 2 and create Amazon wish lists such that a school community, if they choose to, can fulfill the needs of a group of students. The most recent numbers show that there's just shy of 850 students in temporary housing in District 2. So we will soon hopefully be reaching out to a lot of the different schools in D2. And if you can help to mobilize your parent communities, we will be moving that forward hopefully within the next week. Jocelyn Anchor has created these wish lists on their own, so it should be as easy as just sending an email. So that's a really terrific thing that all of District 2 can be really proud about, coming together to support the students in our district. And then the third thing that I wanted to mention was that I was at the Queens High School President's Council meeting yesterday, not because I have a student there, but because I was presenting. And they had a really terrific member of community food advocates who gave an update on the next round of pandemic EBT. So we all got these cards over the summer, or those of us who have children in public school got cards over the summer based on need, but for those mostly We got $420 to use at grocery stores, food markets, etc. Some of us worked together with members of the community to start websites like sharemypebt.com to try and make donations if you were getting that money. It has not yet been completely verified, but they were hoping to have another meeting today, but there will be another round of PEBT. So last year, the DOE and the state calculated that students should get $5.70 per day to eat. That number has been increased to $6.84 per day. And so what has been decided at the state level, because there's such variability in the number of days that students were in school versus remote, and that's different for elementary schools versus middle school and high school who were completely absent for several months there, is that it's very likely that every student will get $820, and then there will be an additional top up to a maximum amount for those who have been fully remote of $1,320. So there will be another top up once they figure out how to calculate that based on the number of days that additional students were remote. And additionally, there will be another $375 put on for the summer, but that will come later. So for those of you who are in contact with your schools, PTAs, and or for all of us in our liaison schools, pandemic EBT is something that we should remind people to use to come together around if they are able to make donations. And we worked again with a member of the community and Corey Johnson's office put together a website called sharemypebt.com, so that for those who are able to make a donation, if this was money that they were not anticipating, to food pantries and other food insecurity locations across the city. And that's my report.
And it's our last meeting of the year as well.
And it's going to be our last Students in Temporary Housing meeting tomorrow, so come celebrate with us. So the work will continue.
Okay, Ben, the Remote Learning Committee, or if you had not finished your questions to the superintendent, you could do so now.
Thank you, Kelly McGuire. And also, I would like to also say that Clinton should have a end of the year party, a graduation party. Thank you.
Okay, now Robin, correct me if I'm wrong. We go to the second public speaking session. Is that correct?
No, I think we have to discuss the resolution first.
Okay, the resolution presented by Eric, yes. Discussion on the resolution.
So I have a question. This just comes from naivete, which is this additional money, the foundation aid, the Fair Student Funding, does it go directly to schools, or is there a portion that comes to the city and the DOE in order to be able to make decisions about how to use it? I went to a meeting with the principal of one of my children's schools and asked him very directly what he was going to do with the additional money that would be going from 90% funded to 100% funded. And he already had very specific ideas about what to use on with that money. And I just, in reading this resolution very carefully, though I agree with it in spirit, I just wonder, where does that money go? Is there a certain amount of the money that can go towards hiring more teachers and creating more space, or does it go to specific principals? So should this resolution be directed at principals rather than the central DOE? Sorry, I hope I explained that correctly.
Sure, and Ushma, and I'll ask for some support and assistance from others on the council who may be better versed in all the different revenue and funding streams. But The first piece, as you said, is some of the money is to support bringing all the schools up to 100% in terms of the fair student funding to get their full allocation. Those dollars I know will sit within the school with the principal and be at their discretion on how they use it, just like fair student funding is today. They just get a decrease, say, of 10%. So now they'll get that full amount in increase and could use that money as they see fit within the guidelines for fair student funding. My understanding is that there will be significant additional streams of money coming that either I think the city can decide if they want to increase the amount of money that's attached to every student in terms of fair student funding. They could probably increase that amount. And then I assume that there'll be other funding that comes from the federal government. Some is supposed to be used for reopening. That would be more central DOE, but how they bring that out to the schools, I assume is still open for conversation. And that may reach the extent of my understanding of these funding streams. What I could say, and again, defer to others, on the council, is that there's clearly going to be a significant inflow of funding and money. How it manifests itself at the school level versus the district level, I just don't have those. I just don't know.
So I
Yeah.
think, yeah. And I wish Lainey Hameson was still here because she would be the one to really walk us through this. But my understanding is foundation aid is going to be increased by about $500 million this year, right? And that is probably going to go straight into fair student funding to bring every school at 100% of fair student funding. Now, it's the principal's discretion, quote unquote, but it's really the school leadership team. It's the school leadership team that is supposed to look at the comprehensive education plan for the school and make sure the school-based budget is aligned with the CEP. So yes, in the end, the principal has a say, but school leadership should definitely be at the table working with the principal to figure out how you use that additional fair student funding. What we are trying to do, we meaning the sponsors of the resolution, as well as other advocates across the city, is to bring some accountability to this additional funding. It's $500 million this year from the state for foundation aid, but next year it's going to increase until 3 years down the road, we're going to get $1.3 billion in extra foundation aid. Instead of putting it into foundation aid, which the DOE can do whatever it wishes, we want to actually put it into the Contracts for Excellence law, which is the law that came about after we won the Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit. So that money that we won through the settlement went into Contracts for Excellence, which comes with stipulations. You can only spend it for certain things like class size reduction, like higher student to teacher ratio or lower student to teacher ratio, time on task, and a whole bunch of other things. So what we want to see happen with that additional funding from the state this year and the next, actually in perpetuity, because we're going to get increased amount of funding from here on end, we want to make sure that some of that money is required for class size reduction. And we want to start that with developing a class size reduction plan. And in fact, that plan existed back in 2007 when we first won the Campaign for Fiscal Equity money. And we had a plan. It was just abandoned after the economic downturn in 2008. So there's accountability issue in this and directing money to class size reduction rather than allowing the DOE to do what it wishes. So this actually doesn't have to do with federal funding this year, because the federal funding is a one-time deal.
Okay, thank you for that. That was very helpful in terms of background. I guess I'm just still stuck, and I'll play my cards right now. I mean, you have my support on this, but the therefore be it resolves are not specific to what you just said necessarily. And I think that was where I got hung up. all in all, this resolution is going to be a good signal to elected officials that this is, the desire, which is why you have my support on it. But the therefore be it resolved are not going to necessarily make the point that the schools themselves also need to pledge to use their money towards this. I know my son's high school is planning to do, or the principal, together with the SLT, point taken, was planning on hiring more social workers and guidance counselor, which I think is more important than ever, as opposed to class size reduction that was much lower on the wish list for that particular principal around some of the other things that he wanted to get accomplished. So I think that's my suggestion for embellishment, not to stand in the way of moving this forward, but it's that I feel like this misses the bullseye just a little.
I have a question as well. So I understand that the federal, the additional federal funds are one-time expenses. I mean, wouldn't the campaign for fiscal equity lawsuit funds also be considered maybe not one-time disbursements, but isn't it limited to like 3 years or something like that? I mean, it's not ongoing. While the money you would think for reducing class sizes would mostly go to teachers, which are reoccurring expenses, right?
Well, it's additional funding every year from this year on. We're getting 500 million additional this year, and next year it's going to be whatever it is, 750 million or something. And then in the third year, we're going to get the full promised amount, which is 1.2, 1.3 billion, something like that.
And do we get, so the fourth year, do we continue to get that? I mean,
yes,
I'm just,
yeah,
we would,
yeah.
oh, we
It's
do?
additional
Okay.
funding, yeah. At least
Oh,
that's
okay.
my understanding. It's not a 3-year deal and then it's going to go away. It's an additional increase. Yeah.
Okay, great. And
I was gonna say, Tom, just honestly, at some point, like there's only so many years you could play out, right? And any budget cycle, right? They could turn around and stop this, or they could include it. But at least it seems like there's some reliability for the next 3 years that there's been a commitment.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm all for it. Yeah. I mean, I think reducing class, I don't know who would be against reducing class sizes. You know, they're huge. And I also wonder if like, if you put lowered the cap on the largest cap size class sizes, if that would be more of a therefore that, you know, is more concrete than just because if they go beyond a certain amount, they can't, right? I mean, according to UFT bargaining and things like that, maybe if we lowered the, you know, maximum capacity, that might be something to think about. But
and one thing, Tom, and some others could, you know, have the history is in the C4E settlement, there were class size targets that were agreed to as part of it, which were lower than the UFT contracts. And it's escaping my memory now since time has passed, but I think for kindergarten to first grade, I'm making it up, was 22 students was the cap, and it increased slowly from there. But there were targets that were set, and you know that's probably a good thing to circulate, is what the class size targets were that were agreed to in the settlement.
It was 20 for K through 3.
20. It was class cap was 20 in K through 3. So.
Well, it wasn't so much a cap; it was the target class size.
Yeah,
I mean, we were supposed to reduce it to.
Yeah.
We have 33 kids in third grade classes now, right? So I mean, that's
the UFT contractual maximum is a huge problem, and that's a labor contract, right? It has nothing to do with pedagogical max. It's just the working condition maximum. And I would love for the UFT to actually reconsider their contractual maximum, but I don't think that's a resolution we can do.
Well, I'd like to find out why this resolution was presented as opposed to the resolution number 81, which had passed on class size and school overcrowding. Because if it already passed, if the council already passed it in June 2014 with similar classroom size expectations, why not just write a letter to the chancellor or to the DOE and say this has been the council's view on classroom size. why come out with a new resolution?
This is
Ben, I
new
missed the
money.
date. You're referring to something from 2014?
Right, but it was a resolution number 81 that was passed on classrooms, on class size.
I mean,
You weren't there. You, Robin, and Sheena were in that council that passed the year.
yeah, I guess it probably escaped my memory from 7 years ago to be specific, but I think it's time to
It's on our website.
To refresh it. Again, I think, you know, we're here tonight 7 years later with a different council, different context and circumstances that we, you know, tried to lay out in the resolution, and hoping that, you know, this council, you know, still remains focused on an issue that's important for parents and families.
It's been important for the last 7 years. So, but you know, we already have it. It's the same concept. I don't see why not just write a letter.
Right, we're reaffirming our position now that we have new money coming in, and we actually have a real chance of reducing class size now.
Well, especially with 2,000 students, fewer students in D2, obviously that can happen. But I don't know. It seems procedurally you have it already. You can send out a letter, you know, to whoever saying that this is something that we've been wanting for a while.
Yeah,
it just seems it's silly to rehash the same thing if you have it already.
I mean, it's, again, I think the council have a chance to vote on whether they think it's silly or not after 7 years. But, you know, I think that's a point that everyone should consider, whether it's silly to reaffirm this statement 7 years later.
I don't think it's silly if nothing has happened. You know, I mean, if classes are still crowded, it's not silly to reaffirm this. And
I'm talking procedurally, not about the actual intent of it. We already have it. It's like, are we going to vote next month's resolution back again? You know, if you have it, you know, let's advocate for it. I mean, if you don't advocate, it's never going to get done. Or maybe
a wealth of new information in this resolution concerning money and you know what has transpired, you know, in the time since that resolution that you referred to.
Yeah, but well, sure, you had more impetus for it, but it's still the same concept, you know. And then
our resolutions are non-binding, though.
I think again, the council will have a chance to take that point of view, and when we vote.
And you can look at it this way: our resolutions are non-binding. So if they were binding, that we could go back and say, listen to our resolution. But since they're just persuasive anyway, I mean, I think class size is so important that we could pass one every single session and it would be worth it, personally. But I mean, they're just persuasive. So if you don't like it, don't vote for it, right?
It's not about whether I like it. It's about, you know, procedurally, is that what we're going to be doing? You know, just echoing what. I mean, we could have discussions about this, which is fine, you know, and just and invite DOE people and advocate, because what's really important here is not passing the resolution. What's really important is advocating for it. And class size, obviously, if you look at any management study, when you have when you're trying to you know, in the role of a teacher has to manage her students, has to advocate, excite their students, have to teach to their students. You need a smaller amount of students. I mean, there are tons of studies on that. But if we can't get that across to the DOE, if we're just going to put out resolutions, then you know, what is that? You know, we have to advocate. That's how you get things across.
Yeah, and some of us have been advocating for the last 10 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so
Fantastic.
I'm going to continue to advocate.
It's
one
like,
of them is by doing resolutions.
But
there
we
are other
already
things
have
we
the
do.
resolution as part of the council. I mean, we should really be studying what resolutions have been passed and what we should be advocating for.
So Ben, we welcome you to go study that. Please.
And I have. That's why I brought it up.
You could look.
That's why, because I had read this. I had read this a while ago, and that's why when I saw this resolution, because it wasn't actually shared with Robin Broshi, did not share it with the actual council. It was sent out to everybody, so it was missed. You know, we used to have collaboration in this council, and I'm just kind of shocked that, you know, here's the resolution. I knew about it, Other people should know about it. You were actually there to vote on it. You, Robin, and Sheena were, you know, and just we should be figuring out ways to advocate for things that are this important. Absolutely,
Yeah,
you know, we could
great.
save a
Thank
step.
you, Ben. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on the resolution? Okay, now we'll go to the second public speaking session. Rob?
Yep, the first speaker is Kaushik Das.
Thank you.
1 second. I just am pulling out my participant list. I don't see Kaushik logged in.
He is, I just promoted him.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Kaushik.
You're on mute.
You can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Is our district superintendent still on? Just out of curiosity.
Can't see you, but we can hear you.
So I had some additional comments on the, Eric requested additional data on middle schools. With that data on middle schools and with what I had pointed out anecdotally, there's been a lot of people getting their first choice and then nothing in between, and then they go down to fifth, sixth, seventh choices. I'd also point out there's been discrepancies between several parents where one student would say have a waiting list of 10 at MAT, for example, while another one would have 50. And that would be reversed for SALC, for example. These are just example schools where one parent might see their child as a 50 waiting list on SALC and a 10 for MAT. If I understand the algorithm correctly, that should not have happened. Were there additional adjustments made due to either geography or race or economic situation? Because that was not the understanding that was provided to all parents, and that situation should not exist. Is there a way to look into that as well with the data that you present next month? And then in addition to that, I also noticed that Ms. Broshi had questions regarding GNT. I question her sudden interest in GNT when she's consistently spoken against it and decided that it's racist in many forms and wants it closed. I wonder if this has anything to do with her reelection bid, as there has been a lot of discussion here, I think, regarding people's reelection, and people should take that into consideration when making statements when elections haven't closed yet. That's it for now. Thank you.
Sorry. The next speaker is Craig Slutskin.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
One more thing. A few folks asked me to bring up tonight is a complaint I've heard from those same parents. This is a comment for the group, though. I've heard from several fellow parents that they've been receiving CEC campaign emails from current CEC members that were unsolicited. It's believed that these emails were taken from PTA, I guess, listservs, as there really wouldn't be any other way for CEC members to get these parents' emails. And this was very distressing for my fellow parents as they felt this was a personal violation. This was in particular a problem noted from several of my friends at PS 11, which I believe was the home school from Ms. Broshi for many years. I believe these parents have made formal complaints to DOE, but if this is true, it's very alarming, and I would have hoped that CEC members would have been better than that and would have been much more sensitive to parents' information. So I look forward to the DOE investigating this matter, and I look forward to the CEC members trying to act with integrity during elections. Thank you.
Next speaker is Robin Kelleher.
Hi, thank you for having me. I just wanted to show up how you'd like us to be presented, which is anonymous, muted, impersonal. You know, we've all gotten quite used to these masks, despite what you say, how you're anti-mask going forward. You'd like to get us all back in school. We'd like to get back to normal. But I find a lot of what is said is actually not the truth. I echo what Kaushik said about Robin Broshi. I don't know where she's getting her details for tonight, but her candidate statement and her record on her CEC meetings state otherwise. So she's deceiving a lot of a lot of District 2, and she's also spamming, which is ironic considering she doesn't want us to even speak or be heard on these meetings. So my main point here is we're sick and tired of being censored and gagged. And I don't know if you realize this, but no one's watching this. We've done what we wanted. We've pushed everyone away. We're out for ourselves. We come in here, we have our own agenda. Eric, I thought the way you spoke to Ben was hostile and embarrassing. I think others noted that. And I think everyone in this district is sick and tired. I'm glad that's funny, but it's really not. It's actually really sad because this district is sick and tired of the hostility. We're sick and tired of getting nothing done for our children. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Children are depressed. Crime is up. Suicide is up. And here we are going back and forth like chickens with their heads cut off. It's an embarrassment to all of us. And thank God this is the last meeting. And I pray to God that whatever God it is, because I could care less, I'm not censoring any gods. Whether it's a he or she, I don't care what color she is, because I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to get stuff done, to do our work. And I really hope that District 2 parents speak. And I hope that we can get through the rest of this meeting without any more plugs, whether it's for Jocelyn or Robin plugging her agenda or Eric silencing Ben or anyone laughing at someone else's comments, because this is not the forum for that.
Time.
Next speaker is Janine Kiley. Janine, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yep, we can.
I am outside, so if I put a mask back on, it's because somebody's walking by. I believe I am the only speaker in the second round who is not running for CEC and is not endorsed by Place with recommendation emails going out nonstop. But that is not why I'm speaking. I am speaking as an education activist. And I want to remind people, if you want to make something happen, you do have to pass resolutions. You do have to advocate. Most recently, this CEC passed a resolution in support of pandemic budget adjustments. And guess what? That happened. Wasn't unanimous, but it happened. 75 Morton, the newest school, the middle school in District 2, I believe, but I don't have the final count in front of me, more than 20 resolutions were passed over 12 years of advocacy. So work hard, keep at it, and don't feel bad about passing one resolution on a topic every 7 years. 75 Morton opened because we were relentless as a community, whether it's the local community board, reaching out to elected officials, or the CEC. So I encourage you to get involved and stay involved and get people involved in between meetings as well. Thank you.
That was the end of the speakers list.
Thank you, Shino. Thank you. So now we'll have the voting on the resolution. Do we have a motion to vote on the resolution?
Move for
Second.
moving this resolution to a vote.
Second.
You need to make a motion to approve or
I'd like to
vote
make
yes
a
on
motion
it.
to approve the resolution on class size.
Second.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'll get this right someday.
Okay, so let's have a vote on the motion.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. Robin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Eric, how do you vote?
Yes.
Emily, how do you vote? Or did she leave? Emily may have left.
No, I vote yes. I vote yes. I vote yes.
Okay. I am voting yes. Edward, how do you vote?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Ben, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ushma, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Len, how do you vote?
I agree with a lot of what Ben said, but I will vote yes.
Okay. Shino, how do you?
Yes.
And Tom, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, so the
Katerina.
right, I was just about to do that. Katerina, how do you vote?
Thank you. I also vote yes.
Okay, so the resolution passes 10-0 with the student member also voting yes. So it's unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so now we have the approval of the minutes.
Yes, I shared a draft version earlier today. And I don't know, obviously we've been used to getting a good product from Yvette, so I don't know if this passes muster, but I'm perfectly or certainly willing to make revisions as necessary based on the members' review if they had a chance to look at it, or to work on it some more if you need some time to look it over again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to look at them. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we can table that until the next meeting, and you should have the remaining minutes to look at before then.
Thank you, Vincent. Okay, any new business? So do I have a motion to adjourn the calendar meeting?
I make a motion.
Second.
I second.
Okay, so let's take a break and come back in 10 minutes for the working business meeting. Okay?
Okay.
Everybody.
No, take a break.
You don't want to light on?
No, it's okay. You guys should be sleeping in bed. Okay, Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Okay, everything okay?
Yeah, a nice penultimate meeting. You know, glad people are finding other things to do in nice weather and come to our meetings.
We've got one more, don't we?
Yeah, penultimate, second to last, right?
Yeah.
True,
That's
yes.
my husband's favorite word, penultimate.
Yeah. Yeah.
We live stream ourselves like from the Clinton prom, like
Yeah.
having a drink together.
Yeah, we should.
It's just down the street from me. I feel like, yeah.
What's that?
I said
Do you have a prom?
No, for the same reason. I'm
Oh,
class
really?
president at Stuyvesant, and I've been trying to advocate for a prom for the past like 5 months, and it's just such a disaster. So I really feel for our speaker.
Well, here's the real question, Katerina. Does anyone else on this call wish they hadn't had a prom?
Went to five
No.
proms. So I feel like
I think
they
I've
should
gone
have
to
at least
0.
one. I think they should have at
Yeah.
least one. I feel like we should put in for like a street use permit to just shut down that block and like string lights back and forth and let them at least have a dance party in front of the school or something.
But Usman, if they do that, they can't drink alcohol. That's a problem.
I think you should get Keith Hernandez on it.
Thank you for finding that entertaining. I've found it a source of entertainment and amusement for the last 20 years. One person even called me and they were like, and I tried to, this was like 5 years ago. I was like, oh, are you guys good friends? He's like, yeah, we're great friends. I was like, no, you're not, because you haven't had the right phone number for him for 15 years.
Right. Apparently, Ushma has Keith Hernandez's old phone number and gets calls occasionally looking for Keith.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So today I put up on Twitter that I got a text message this morning for him asking him for something. And so I decided it was too good not to share. So I asked people on Twitter if they would ghostwrite my reply. So yeah, it's just been an entertaining day on Twitter. I pledged that I would answer my phone Vantelay Enterprises all day.
Oh,
But
I was going to say, yeah.
nobody actually ever calls anymore. I got one phone call and I knew who it was, and they wouldn't have found that entertaining. So
Vandelay Industries. Say Vandelay Industries.
there were some, like even Flurp replied, and it was a very funny reply. I consider that like a personal badge of honor that Flurp like tweeted something at me.
Flurp, who is Flurp? Tell me.
Nobody, yeah, I'd love to see these people en masse one
No
day.
idea who Flurp actually
Yeah, nobody knows who anybody is.
Okay.
That's the wonder of Twitter. Such a great universe.
All right, so we'll
All
call
right.
the meeting to order, right? Vincent?
Yes, I'm here.
Let's call the meeting to order and call the roll.
Sure. All right, so the meeting is called back to order at 8:42. And Robin, are you here? Not yet. Eric, I see. Emily is not here. I'm obviously here. Ed is present. Maud is not present. Ben Morden, are you present?
Yes.
Okay. Ushma,
here.
yes, I see Ushma. Len Silverman, are you back?
Here. Yep.
Shino, are you
I'm
present?
here. I'm eating dinner, so I have the camera off. Sorry.
All right, that's okay. And I see Tom. So, yeah, so Robin, I called Robin first. She may not have returned yet. Okay, so right now we have 1, 2, 3. We have 8. And Katerina, are you back?
Yes.
Okay. We have 8 plus the student member.
Is Robin back? Robin? All right, so I guess, we'd like to hear from the committee to hire a new administrative assistant. Any report from that committee? Shino?
Sure. So we got a bunch of resumes from applicants who applied for another council, but apparently the job announcement was posted as citywide and community education council without specifying particular council. So these resumes were forwarded to us. I've reviewed them, and I'm hoping that Ben and Robin can review them as well. In the meantime, we received another 6 or so applications this week, which need to be reviewed. After the 3 of us review them and narrow it down to a handful of candidates that are worth interviewing, we'll reach out to them and schedule interviews and conduct the interviews, and hopefully we can wrap up those interviews by mid-June, I hope. That's what I'm sort of hoping for.
Thank you for doing this to the 3 of you.
You're quite welcome. And we do have some really strong candidates, which is really good to know. So I'm hopeful that we'll find somebody.
Is there a deadline that you have to make a selection by?
No, we don't have a deadline. The only reason we're doing it this term is we don't think it's a good thing for the new council to have to start a new term with brand new membership with trying to hire somebody. So if we weren't turning over, we can take all the time in the world.
Okay. Next, I have noted here Google email. I'm not quite sure what that's about. Can anyone enlighten me on that?
Yes. So on June 30th, our CEC email accounts will expire unless you're returning on July 1st. So for those of you who are not running and not applying for the Board of President's position, like myself, if you want to archive your emails and whatever's on your G Drive, you should do so in late June. And there is a Google Takeout. I think that's the thing you can use that will allow you to download everything associated with your CECD2 account. And you'll just zip file it and you download it and you'll have a record of it. Apparently though, you won't be able to migrate your data into another Gmail account by using Takeout. So if you want to migrate your contact list or any of the old emails as emails in the right format, you're going to have to figure out something else. But it's something that we should all, either that or you just lose everything, which it's totally up to you what you want to do. But just thought I should mention that.
That's actually a little shocking because the emails may need to be foiled in the future for some reason. And there should be archives of all these emails kept kind of, for at least, I don't know, 7 to 10 years, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can't keep the Gmail accounts because every account costs money, right? So we do need to archive them in ways that doesn't cost the council. But if we get an IT person, maybe that person can just do Takeout for all the accounts and archive them on the AA's computer. That's a possibility.
Are you looking for that? Are you looking for applicants with that skill, IT skill?
I've only looked for Microsoft suite of softwares like Word, Excel, and then Google. I haven't necessarily found anybody who has that level of IT skills. Actually, there's one applicant, but I don't know if an IT specific person would be the right fit for this. So, but DOE, the District 2 office, has an IT person that Yvette used to work with. So if we needed IT assistance, we can get somebody from the district office.
Okay, thank you. So now, new business. Is there any new business that we should discuss?
Hey, one thing is I'll put together a little data request from admissions as a start and circulate it to the council. So we could ask Kelly for specifics that we're interested in. So I'll just put something together and then people could add to it.
I went and looked up that Chalkbeat article that somebody linked to or quoted from. And so that data does exist if they already were very specific about 89% of kids getting their first, second, or third choice compared to 87 last year. So hopefully it won't be too hard for Kelly to get the data that you're asking for, that we collectively are asking for.
Yeah.
The DOE, can I just say something?
Yeah.
The DOE always releases that information within a few days of when offers go out. So my expectation is that it will be in the press in the next few days.
Yeah.
We could always foil the records and get those sometime in 2025 if we dispute their.
Well, if we keep demanding, maybe we'll get them sooner.
Yeah. I don't
We
think
could
so.
write a resolution on it.
Another one, yes, okay.
And then vote on it in 7 years.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank
Wait,
you.
I think we've been asked to co-sponsor a forum on menstrual products.
Oh, yes. I spoke to Robin about that. There's an equity issue. Assembly Member Rosenthal's office has reached out to us and has asked that we co-sponsor a forum. And Robin was corresponding with that office. And I think it's important and I think we should do it. I don't know what the other members feel, but Robin agrees with me and I think we should do it. Do you have anyone have any thoughts about co-sponsoring such a forum?
What is it on?
Menstrual equity. And Shino, do you have more information?
I actually don't. I don't know if this is about providing free menstrual products in all middle and high schools.
Yes, I think so. And, and educating students and professionals about these issues of relating to young women and their needs. If Robin was here, she would be able to discuss it at length. But I think it's very important. And I think that if you have been following the Assembly member, I think that this is something that she's quite concerned with and that she's done quite a bit of work on.
And we actually, I'm not being facetious, we may have passed a resolution on this several years ago.
Okay.
I'll have to look back in the records.
I'm not opposed to that in theory. Could we just get something at least a little explicative of what we're talking about? That's all. Just something.
Oh yeah, that's the aim here, to have her office come in or to co-sponsor such a presentation.
One other thing, I saw the emails where the people wanted to come and talk about the new site for PS 150, and I just didn't understand why we were putting that off. Is there a reason we don't want them to come next month and want to wait for a new council?
Well, I was of the opinion that the new council, because if it were to happen, it would happen in 2022 and thereafter, and the new members that will be elected would be best suited to debate and discuss and hash out all of those issues. And that's why I thought that it would be best for them to wait for the new council, which will be sworn in. I guess we'll know who the new council is later this month when the election results are announced in late May. So you'll have a whole new slate of council members who may have different opinions about zoning issues and so forth. Then
it's not all going to get taken care. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
Yes.
Please finish your thought. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Well, so I thought it would be best for that election to take place, for those members to be elected, and for them to schedule a presentation on that zoning issue in July, which is just 2 months away.
Ushma, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, those discussions could start. I mean, nothing's going to get decided in a singular meeting. So, I don't know. Seemed like it would be an interesting thing for us to start to hear about as a community. But I understand your reasoning. I don't have any strenuous objection to it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I just don't understand the reasoning, only because we're not a lame duck council. I mean, we're all still serving in our positions. We may feel ideologically one way on certain issues and ideologically other ways, but we're still in our positions. And whether we're here for a month or 2 months, it doesn't mean we stop debating and stop discussing the issues that are important to members of our community. So I'm just a little troubled by the fact that this has kind of been put to the wayside. I don't know for what particular reason. I mean, I understand the new council's coming in, but you could always say that. So then, I mean, our terms are for 2 years, and that should be the amount of time that we actually serve in our office, and give this the full effort of our energy and our time. And that's for 2 years exactly, not like, 10 months and okay, it's 2 more months. They're so close. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm just I'm troubled when there are members of this community that are interested in these issues, specifically tied to this particular school, and they're not getting the attention that they deserve, and I just don't think that's fair.
Anyone else?
I'm going to support Ed on this, just because if there's any follow-ups that are necessary. I mean, it seems like the DOE only comes once to discuss an issue, and if their issues come out of this, I mean, wouldn't a council that's ongoing be in a better place to resolve issues than we are when our last meeting is the next meeting? Maybe I don't understand what they're coming here to present.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I don't have a problem with postponing, it's because to me, it's not just about reciting PS 150. I think this gives us, as CECD2, an opportunity to look at lower half of Manhattan comprehensively, beyond 150 reciting, to think about how are the zones that we created back in 2009 working? What is the enrollment like in Chinatown? Are there anything else that we should be adjusting and thinking about? And for us to get into that discussion and start it now doesn't make sense to me, because most of us won't be returning. So we get this really comprehensive planning kind of conversation started now, and then the DOE is going to have to actually restart everything from scratch come July. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's better to just wait till the new council comes in. It doesn't stop the DOE from doing outreach in lower Manhattan. They should be talking to 150, and I think they are talking with 150 school community. I think they are talking to the principals in lower Manhattan. So we're not the only way that the DOE does outreach. That's just my 2 cents here.
And the zoning committee would have to approve of it if there was a rezoning, right? So, I mean, the new zoning committee should, be listening to this presentation. Not sorry, Eric, but not Eric if he's not going to be here.
I'm not.
I would hope Eric would continue to have a vested interest in the students of District 2. And yet, the flip side of that argument, for devil's advocate's sake, is that, I think there are a few people on our current council who are running again, but this could very likely be a full slate of totally new people. I hope that many of them will have been attending these meetings, but sorry, I don't want to violate any laws about saying something about the candidates for CEC. So I think there's value in both sides of this, but I don't know that I care enough to strenuously object and say that they should come to our next meeting.
Well, we could always be like the angry ex-CC members and come back to chide us for not having good meetings. That's always fun.
All right.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.